coffee and donuts are ready. Right through there. That was a good catch. Thank you, Aaron. Good morning, everybody. I hope you had a chance to get a cup of coffee and one of these wonderful donuts that Rebecca Wilson provided for us. You've probably noticed it's a little different today, but welcome to the Worship Café at the UU Church of St. Petersburg. Whether you're here in Gilmore Hall with us, or watching live, or watching a recording later, we're really glad you've chosen to join us today, and we appreciate your flexibility in all the changes. If you're facing away, if you want to turn your chair around, just pick it up and move it however you would like. Don't bother about irritating people, that'll be fine. Our minister, Reverend Ben Atherton Zeman, is away this week, so our trusty worship team, who are wearing these special name tags today, are in charge, and we're offering a casual service of mostly music and stories, and after the service, hot dogs, which of course means it's 4th of July. So stay with us and enjoy what you would like to have. Worship team, give a wave so people can see which ones you are. Yep. It's a really good group, and they've been working hard to put this together. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed spending a little social time before the service. If you're a newcomer, I thought I'd share some observations about how to tell if you're in the wrong church. If you're looking for a good UU church, you might be in the wrong church if the ushers ask smoking or non-smoking. You might be in the wrong church if there's an ATM in the lobby. And you really might be in the wrong church if 4 women in the choir are all married to the minister. Not a good sign. But if you're happy to see that we have a Black Lives Matter flag outside, and if you're looking for a church of people who think it's okay, in fact it's good, to love your country while at the same time knowing that it needs a lot of work, and if you believe, as we do, that it matters what we do in this world, and that we're all here to help one another, well, you might have found the right church. So welcome. There are a few announcements in your printed program. Things are relatively quiet around here in the summer, and we're still getting over COVID, but we're still gathering together every single Sunday, still feeding over 80 hungry people on Friday night, and still committed to one another. The service begins now with words from today's worship associate, Todd Wellman.
Thank you, Susan. As Susan said, I'm Todd Wellman, and I want to say good morning and say that this service is difficult for me. I'm pro-choice, pro-gay, am gay. But it's great to be here celebrating with you all and recognizing that we can still celebrate together what we have. In his final speech before his assassination in April 1968, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said the following: "All we say to America is, be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they hadn't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of the press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for right. All we say to America is, be true to what you said." We know what that somewhere is, the US Constitution. We're celebrating it today along with the U.S. Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 246 years ago today. Now, if you're willing and able, please stand while Kelly Patton finds our chalice. The chalice is a vibrant symbol of our commitment to one another and to making the world a better place. And say together the words of our covenant. They are printed in your program. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you, Kelly. Now, please remain standing as you're able for our first hymn. The words on the blue song sheets, it's for This Land Is Your Land. We printed some of the many, many verses people have added to Woody Guthrie's original song over the years. If you have a favorite we've left out, well, you can feel free to come up and sing it to us. I now welcome Rebecca and Aaron and others, and Trish, thank you, to lead the music.
Good morning, everybody. We all know this, so let's sing out.
Oh, without masks, probably, for us anyway. We're doing it.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Gulf Stream waters to the Redwood Mountains. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me the endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. When the sun came shining and I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving and the dust clouds rolling, the voice was chanting as the fog was lifting. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said no trespassing. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That sign was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Gulf Stream forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me.
Last line.
This land was made for you and me.
From here. Thank you. So, I know one of our kids is in the bathroom right now, but I see one of our favorite children right over here. Would you come up and help me with the children's story? Yay. Are you on the maid? Your sister will be back in a minute. While you're getting here, this song about This Land Is Your Land takes me back a bit. I'm wondering if there are others here who spent some time in the 60s and 70s who remember a particular call-out chant that we did. We would say, what do you want? Anybody know? Freedom. When do you want it? Now. What do you want? Freedom. When do you want it? Now. Well, I want to tell the kids and the adults first a little story about our Vice President, Kamala Harris. Some of you know that she grew up in Berkeley, California. Her parents were real activists. They took her on all kinds of protest marches and so forth. So that's part of her DNA, I guess. Hey, you can come right up here, and you're going to help me in just a minute, okay? Anyway, her mother told this story about her. When Kamala was a little girl, much littler than the two of you, just 2 or 3 years old. She went with her mother to a grocery store, and as toddlers would do, she starts pitching a fit and whining and just being not happy at all. And finally, her mother is so frustrated, she yells at her, "What do you want?" And immediately Kamala said, "Freedom." When do you want it now? So she was raised right. Okay. Yeah. So I want to ask you two, we're talking today about being free. Do you know what that means? What do you think it means? Oh. Does it mean you can do whatever you want to do? Means just doing whatever. Means being.
No, damn.
Okay. Someone has to interpret for me out there. But, you know, if it means doing what you want to do and being who you want to be, do you think it's okay to do whatever you want to do? No. Like, what are some things you're not supposed to do?
You can't jump on your couch at home. Picking on other friends.
You don't what?
Don't pick on other friends.
Yeah, these kids are raised right, too. What? Right. And I wanted to tell you a quick little story about one thing I bet you know you're not supposed to do. What if you were a person who liked to bite people? Do you get to go around and bite them? No. And part of the reason is because it hurts people. But I'll tell you a little story about another reason. When I was a little girl about your age, I was in kindergarten, and there was a girl named Debbie, and she liked to bite people. She would just go up for no reason and bite you. It was terrible. Every time she walked into a room, all the children would start crying because we hated her so much. Well, at least 50 years later, when all my friends and I are old ladies, we got together. Debbie had moved away when we were little. We got together and we're talking about those days, and it's okay. It's okay. And we're talking about those days. It's okay. And I said, does anybody remember that girl, Debbie? Every single person said she was a biter. So you will never be forgotten if you're a biter. Just because you have the freedom to bite people doesn't mean that you should. So if you will stay right here with me, you're going to help me with the song in a minute. But I also wanted to share a news item from Australia last week. The state of Victoria in Australia has made it illegal to display the Nazi swastika or any symbol of Nazism. The decision has drawn cheers and criticisms from both the left and the right, which usually means it's a pretty good decision. When interviewed on NPR, a leader from Victoria said, yes, this is an infringement on free speech, but freedom isn't just about your rights. It's about what a society decides it will and will not tolerate. These kids understand instinctively that there's some things that will not be tolerated. And our society is having a lot of trouble right now deciding what we will and won't tolerate. But as Presbyterian Minister Peter Marshall said, may we think of freedom not as the right to do as we please, but the opportunity to do what is right. Okay? So now we're going to sing a song, and we're going to ask anyone who would like to stand up for It's I Had a Hammer. And while Rebecca and Trish join us, these kids are going to help us out a little.
Because you have musical instruments? Uh-oh. I'd hammer in the evening all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out warning, I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. Ooh, if I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out warning, I'd sing out the love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. Ooh, if I got a bell. And I got a bell. And I got a song to sing all over this land. It's a hammer of justice. It's the bell of freedom. It's all about love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. It's a hammer of justice. It's the bell of freedom. It's a song about the love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Trish. Hey, good morning. I'm Michael Pohl, and this is a reading entitled Meditation on the 4th of July by UU minister Maureen Killoran. Spirit of life and love, I come before you, black and brown and red and yellow and alabaster. I come longing for the simpler days that truly never were our lot, and I am an American. Hear these voices as in the complexity of our days. I am humanist and Christian and Muslim and Jew, pagan and atheist and Buddhist and UU, and I am an American. I am one who fought for my country, and I am at the same time one who protested war, and I am an American. Amongst the divisions of our days, I've struggled in poverty, and I've accepted the profits of wealth, and I am an American. I am an owner of weapons, and I am one who would control our nation's guns by limiting the who's and what's and how's, and I am an American. As light is shown on our divisions, I live with often unacknowledged privilege, and I am moved at the rage of the complexity of intersecting oppressions, and I am an American. In the challenge of our days, I am one who supports my country, right or wrong, and I am one who claims the traditions of dissent, and I am an American. In this polarized season, I am Democrat, and I am Republican, I am Libertarian, and I am Independent. I am green, and I am confused, and I am an American. Spirit of hope, sit with us in our diversities. Help us hear one another in our divisions. Grant that beginning in this community, we may honor one another's truths and know that a just and faithful tomorrow begins here in our hearts. For with all our problems, with all our pain, with all our limitations and mistakes, we are Americans.
Thank you, Michael. I'm delighted to be able to introduce our guest musician today, Sally Morgan, who happens to also be my neighbor and friend. You'll see that the words to the song she's going to sing are printed on your blue song sheet. Not for you to sing along, just for you to follow along. It's Take Care of This House. It was written about the White House in the musical 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But it could refer to our country. It could refer to this church, to our bodies, to our hearts. Sally.
So you say you've never heard of the musical 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, right? I have never heard of it either until I heard this song that I'm about to do. It was came. Sally. Really? Can we? Is the microphone? I can crank it. Sure. Crank it. Yeah. Not bad. Is that better?
I bet that musical would be a hit if they tried it today. It's very nice. All right. First, I'd like to take a bit of time together to place ourselves in this moment, this time. I realized preparing this service that the first time we did a worship cafe like this in this room was exactly 6 years ago. It was on July the 3rd, 2016. It made me think about all the things that are different now. Just a moment to think about a few things. On July 3rd, 2016, Barack Obama was president of the United States. Joe Biden was vice president. Practically no one thought Donald Trump was going to be elected. Very few people outside of California had even heard of Kamala Harris. Cassidy Hutchinson was 19 years old. Amanda Gorman, our National Youth Poet Laureate, was 18. The Chicago Cubs had still not won a World Series in over a century. COVID-19 had not been discovered. It might not even have existed. And no one on the planet dreamed it would kill 1 million Americans by now. George Floyd was still alive. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still alive. But these two precious children over here had not yet been born. The hope of the free world, my great-nephew Jackson, had not been born. So let's take a moment, each of us, to reflect on the events of the past few years. I'm going to ask you in a moment to call out, just to speak into this room, which is filled with supportive, loving, caring people, to speak out the names of the people you're thinking about or the moments over the past 6 years that have been important, that have changed something about you. You can say the names softly, or you can call them out for everyone to hear. That's up to you. Think of those names for a moment. And now just say them. Baba Greer. Marvin. Mary Turnbull. Mark McNeil. James Camp. Jackson Tuggle. Let's spend just a moment in silence and think on these words from Tennyson. Though much is taken, much abides. Thank you. I'd like to tell you about one of my very best days. It really may be the best day in my life. It's nothing personal. It's not about my personal life. It's just something that I was privileged to witness. I was lucky enough to get to live and work in Indonesia from 1996 to 2001. I got to see the 21st century dawn there. I got to live in the country with the largest Muslim population in the world. I got to experience a culture that changed my worldview. But above all, I got to see the birth of the world's third largest democracy after India and the United States, Indonesia. A revolution in 1998 overthrew a de facto dictator who had been in power for 32 years. They finally held their very first truly free elections on June 7th, 1999. I had volunteered to be an election observer. They were very anxious to have as many Americans or people from other democracies there to observe, because there were over 100,000 voting places spread over 922 islands. It was quite an accomplishment. They kept the process very simple. You showed up at the poll closest to where you lived. And here's what the ballot looked like. It was actually looked better than this. But it was a piece of paper. It had a picture of everyone representing their party. And there were a lot of them. There were 48 parties. People were so excited about getting to vote, they all ran out and started their own political party. And so they got to vote. So since the literacy rate was not that great in some parts of the country, they had a photograph, they had the name of the party, and then a place for you to vote. I love some of the names, like the National Awakening Party, the People's Conscience Party, the Prosperous Justice Party, and my personal favorite, and the woman who did become president eventually, was Megawati. That's her first name, Megawati's party. So you voted by taking, you would go into a little booth. They had several little booths everywhere, and there was a big nail, much bigger than this one, tied to the table there, and you would just poke a hole next to whoever you were voting for. Very simple, but very effective. Then when you came out, they put the ballot they put the ballot in a big locked box, and with a big lock there so everybody could see it. And after you voted, you dipped your thumb in a bowl of ink so that you could only vote once, because if you had ink on your thumb, you voted. And for days and days afterward, people were giving everyone the big thumbs up because they said, I voted. A lot better than those little stickers we use that say I voted. Voting was supposed to begin at 8 o'clock, and everything was ready and open right at 8. I started off on observing at the polls that were at the poll that was right in my own neighborhood in Jakarta. By 8 o'clock, about 100 people had gathered at the site at a little park. 8 o'clock came and went, and still no one moved to vote. They just continued waiting happily, chanting, singing, having breakfast. I couldn't understand why people weren't getting with the program and going in to vote. My Indonesian friend who was accompanying me just smiled and said, wait and see. After about 30 minutes, all the people stood up and looked down this little winding road and started cheering. A very old, very small man was walking toward us, being helped by people on either side. He was hunched over, he was missing one arm, he was missing one ear, but he had the biggest smile I'd ever seen. I looked around and everyone was so happy, many of them with joyful tears. My friend explained that this man was the most beloved in that whole district. He was a journalist who had been imprisoned and tortured during 2 dictatorships, but he continued to speak the truth and call for democracy. Without even discussing it, the entire neighborhood knew that he should be allowed to cast the first vote. He had to be assisted every step of the way. But when he put his ballot in that big box, he pushed his helpers away, stood up on his own, and said, kebebasan, which is Indonesian for freedom. It was beautiful, but the best is yet to come. I'll probably will cry when I tell you the best part. Anyway, the polls closed at 3 in the afternoon, and I came back to my neighborhood to be there for the final voting site that I visited. It seemed like everyone who had voted was there, and they brought their children, and they brought picnics, and it was just a big, fabulous celebration going on. After 3 o'clock, the election official unlocked the big locked box, and they started counting the votes right there. She would hold up the ballot, and she would say, oh, this one is for the People's Conscience Party, and people would clap or boo or whatever, and they put it on a big blackboard. They did a tally right there and counted the votes. And anyway, that way everyone knew for sure that their ballot had been counted. They saw it with their own eyes. At the end, they were locked back up and sent into the district. But this is when I realized the brilliance of this ballot, because it has a hole right here. And to show it to everyone, she would hold it up to the sun. The sun was getting low, and the sun would stream through that hole. Everyone understood that that light coming through was a symbol of freedom. It was a truly spiritual moment for everyone there, and every vote had the sun shine through. By sunset, the people knew the results in their district. It would take weeks for the central government to collect and compile the results from 922 islands, but by sundown on election day, the people were all satisfied that their voices had been heard. Voter turnout was 93%. 2 years, 3 months, and 4 days later, I was back living in the United States watching the World Trade Towers fall on September 11th. Within hours, my email was flooded with messages from Muslim friends on the other side of the world, letting me know that they were praying for us, that they loved me, and they loved America, and they appreciated America as the country that had taught them about democracy. I wish I could have expressed to them how much we have to learn from them, how much we could learn from their fervent, thrilled appreciation of being able to vote freely, from the crowd cheering for all sides of the argument, and about their respect for America, along with their pride for their own country. They showed that it is possible to have patriotism without arrogance or hate toward another country. To paraphrase that great philosopher, Homer Simpson, the best day in your life is only the best day in your life so far. Here's hoping that democracy's best days are not behind us, here or around the world. Young people like Cassidy Hutchinson and Amanda Gorman and Todd Wellman. I know he doesn't think he's young, but to me he's very young. And Michael Pohl, I think he's young too. And these two wonderful children over here, along with my nephew. You need to watch for him. I think he's going to run for president in 2064. They give me hope for our future, for America, and for freedom. Thank you for coming together today and letting me tell the story, the best day of my life. Todd.
Thank you, Susan. Now, you've all heard the expression, freedom isn't free. Well, neither is church. So now, the greeters are going to help with our offering. We'll tape up a collection to keep the congregation going. If you're visiting, feel free to let the collection plate pass you by. You're our guest today. We're happy to have you here.
For some closing words, one of the most powerful poems I know of about freedom is from Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I don't know if it's devastatingly beautiful or beautifully devastating. I guess both. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom.
You know, we all know that our country has greatness and darkness, but we can agree that it is beautiful. So let us join in one of our country's favorite songs, America the Beautiful. Please stand as you're willing and able, and then remain standing afterward for the extinguishing of our chalice.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesties above the fruited plains. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes prove in liberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriotry that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you, Kelly, for joining for the releasing of the flame. Please remain standing as you're able. Let's say together the words we often say together as we end a service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of courage. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world. Our service has ended. Thank you for being part of it. Now please join us for a small early 4th of July celebration, hot dogs and snacks.